It all started on a quiet Sunday morning in my small Midwestern town, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and gossip travels faster than prayer. I had just walked into St. Mary's Church, my usual place of peace, when I felt something different in the air. People were whispering. Eyes lingered on me longer than usual. I brushed it off at first. Maybe it was just my imagination. But then I saw her, Sister Evelyn, standing near the altar with that same self-righteous smile she always wore, the one that made you feel like she could see right through your soul. She had been the church's moral compass for as long as I could remember, leading Bible studies, organizing charity drives, and lecturing anyone who dared to live outside her definition of holy. I used to admire her. But that morning, she looked at me as if I was the devil himself. When the sermon ended, and people began to leave, I overheard her speaking to a small group of parishioners. Some people come here pretending to seek forgiveness, she said, her voice dripping with judgment. But you can't fool God. Sin shows in your eyes. Then she looked directly at me. The group turned their heads, following her gaze. My stomach dropped. My hands started to shake. I didn't even know what rumor she was spreading yet, but I could already feel it tightening around me like a noose. I walked out of the church before I could say something I'd regret. But one thing was certain, if Sister Evelyn wanted to call me a sinner, she'd better be ready for what I knew about her. Because I had seen something she thought no one ever would. That night, I couldn't sleep. Sister Evelyn's words echoed in my head like a curse, you can't fool God. I kept replaying the look on her face, the way she stared at me as if daring me to defend myself. But the thing is, she had no idea I knew what she'd been hiding. It happened about 6 months earlier. I had been volunteering at the church's community pantry, unloading boxes, sorting food donations, helping the elderly, when I stayed late one evening. Everyone else had gone home except for me and Sister Evelyn. She told me she needed to finish some paperwork. I didn't think much of it until I went to grab my jacket from the storage room. That's when I saw her. She wasn't alone. She was with a man, not her brother, not a parishioner, but Father Daniel, our priest. They weren't praying or talking. They were too close. His hand brushed her cheek, and she didn't pull away. In fact, she leaned into him. I froze, hidden behind a shelf of canned goods, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. When she finally stepped back, she whispered, "No one can ever know, Daniel. They wouldn't understand." He just nodded and said, "We're only human, Evelyn." I slipped out quietly, pretending I hadn't seen a thing. But from that day on, every time she preached about purity and judgment, I saw her differently. And now, after she called me a sinner in front of the congregation, I realized something, she wasn't just pretending to be holy. She was hiding behind it. The next Sunday, I decided I wouldn't stay silent anymore. By the next Sunday, word had spread. People were whispering even before the first hymn began. Sister Evelyn's little comment about hidden sinners had done its job. Half the town looked at me like I was carrying some kind of shameful secret. I could have ignored it. I could have just stayed quiet and kept my head down. But the more I thought about what she was doing, standing up there pretending to be pure while tearing others down, the angrier I got. When the service ended, I didn't leave like usual. I waited. She was standing near the altar again, surrounded by her little circle, the same people who loved to talk about everyone else's flaws while pretending to pray for them. I walked straight toward her. My heart was hammering, but my voice came out steady. "Excuse me, Sister Evelyn," I said, loud enough for the others to hear. "You've had a lot to say about my sins lately. Maybe it's time we talk about yours." The room went still. Even the organist stopped mid-note. Evelyn's smile faltered for just a second before she put on that sweet, composed look again. "I don't know what you're implying," she said softly, though her eyes warned me to stop. "Oh, I think you do," I replied. "Remember the night in the pantry? The night you and Father Daniel stayed behind to finish paperwork?" A gasp rippled through the group. One woman's hand flew to her mouth. Evelyn's face went pale. "You're lying," she whispered. "Am I?" I stepped closer. "Because I saw you. And I've kept quiet for months. But you don't get to shame me while hiding something like that." For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. The control she always had, the confidence, the calm, it all cracked right there in front of everyone. I could see it in her trembling hands. The truth had finally hit daylight. For a moment, nobody moved. The church, normally so full of polite chatter and soft hymns, felt frozen in time. The silence was so heavy I could hear the flicker of the candles on the altar. Then, all at once, the whispers started. Oh my God. Did you hear what she said? Father Daniel. Sister Evelyn stood there, her lips trembling as the color drained from her face. She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The confident woman who'd lectured us all about righteousness now looked like a scared child caught in a lie. Enough, she finally said, her voice shaking. You don't know what you're talking about. You've twisted something innocent. I folded my arms. Then explain it. Explain why you were alone with him that night. Why he was touching you. Gasps echoed again. People turned their eyes from her to me, to her again, like a tennis match of disbelief and denial. Father Daniel, who had been standing by the side door, finally stepped forward. His face was flushed red, but his eyes, those calm, priestly eyes, were full of guilt. Stop, he said quietly. That's enough. Everyone turned toward him. Evelyn shook her head, almost pleading. Don't, she whispered, but it was too late. He sighed, running a trembling hand through his hair. She's telling the truth. You could have heard a pin drop. One of the older women clutched her chest. Someone muttered a prayer, and Sister Evelyn, the symbol of our church's moral purity, broke down right there, tears streaming down her face. I didn't feel victorious. Not even a little. I just felt empty. Because when you expose the truth, it doesn't just destroy the liar, it shakes the entire ground everyone's been standing on. By Monday morning, the whole town knew. You couldn't walk into a grocery store, a cafe, or even down Main Street without hearing someone mention it, the church scandal. That's what they were calling it now. Some people said I was brave for speaking up. Others said I'd gone too far. But either way, everyone had an opinion. At first, I thought the truth would set things right. That people would finally see through Sister Evelyn's mask. But the more the story spread, the messier it became. Father Daniel was placed on temporary leave by the diocese while they conducted an internal investigation. The bishop released a statement about moral failure and spiritual reflection. And Sister Evelyn, she disappeared, didn't show up to church, didn't answer calls, didn't even go home, her house lights stayed off for days. I thought maybe I'd feel relief. But instead, I started getting stares, not of sympathy, but suspicion. You really had to humiliate her like that. One of the older ladies at the market said. You could have handled it privately. Another person whispered, maybe she wasn't the only sinner. It didn't matter that I'd only told the truth, people didn't like seeing their perfect world cracked open. And since I was the one who cracked it, I became part of the scandal too. By Wednesday, my boss at the diner told me it might be best to take a few days off. My coworkers barely spoke to me. Even my friends started pulling away. The truth, it seemed, wasn't freeing anyone. It was just burning everything down. But what hurt the most was when I got a message late that night, from an unknown number. It said only one thing. Greater than, you don't know what you've started. That message kept me awake all night. You don't know what you've started. I stared at those words over and over, my mind racing with possibilities. Who sent it? Was it someone defending Sister Evelyn, or could it have been her? By morning, the local paper had already printed the story. Scandal at St. Mary's, beloved sister and priest under investigation. My name wasn't mentioned, but everyone knew who'd spoken up. Then, around noon, I got a knock at my door. It was Officer Green, a middle-aged cop who'd gone to St. Mary's his entire life. His face looked uneasy, like he didn't want to be there. Mind if I come in? He asked. I nodded and stepped aside. He stood in my living room for a long moment before saying, you were one of the last people to see Sister Evelyn before she disappeared. Disappeared, I repeated, my stomach tightening. What do you mean disappeared? She didn't go home after Sunday service. Her car was found behind the church yesterday morning. Purse, phone, everything inside. No signs of a struggle, but no sign of her either. I sank onto the couch, feeling dizzy. You think something happened to her? He shrugged. We don't know, but she's not answering calls, and her family says she hasn't been in touch. Some folks think she ran off out of shame. Others think, he hesitated, something worse. I didn't know what to say. The guilt hit me harder than I expected. I hadn't wanted this. I just wanted her to stop hurting people with her lies. But now, she was gone. After Green left, I sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Then I glanced at my phone again, that anonymous message. Maybe it wasn't a warning. Maybe it was a threat. Because if Evelyn didn't run away, then someone didn't want me talking anymore. That night, the house felt different. Too quiet. Every creak of the floorboards, every gust of wind brushing against the windows made my skin crawl. I double-checked the locks, drew the curtains, even left the kitchen light on, something I hadn't done since I was a kid. Around midnight, I heard it, a faint tapping sound outside my window. 3 slow taps, then silence. My breath caught. I forced myself to peek through the blinds, but there was nothing there, just the streetlight flickering at the corner. I told myself it was nerves. Guilt. Maybe I was just imagining things. But when I turned back toward the living room, my phone lit up on the coffee table. Another message. Greater than, you should have kept quiet. My hands went cold. I dialed the number, but it went straight to voicemail, no name, no voice, just an automated message. The next morning, I went to the police station, showed them the texts, and told them someone was trying to scare me. Officer Green listened carefully, then sighed. We'll file a report, he said, but anonymous messages like this are hard to trace. Could be anyone, some crank who read about it online. But it didn't feel random. Whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. That evening, when I came home, I noticed something strange. My back door was unlocked. I was certain I'd locked it that morning. I pushed it open slowly, my heart pounding. Nothing looked disturbed at first, until I walked into the kitchen. On the counter sat a single white envelope. No return address. My name written across it in neat, slanted handwriting. I tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a photo of me, taken through my living room window the night before. On the back, in that same handwriting, was a short message. Greater than, she's not gone. She's waiting. I barely slept that night. The photo, my photo, sat on the kitchen counter like a curse I couldn't throw away. Whoever left it had been close enough to watch me through the window, close enough to slip into my house. By morning, fear turned into determination. If someone thought they could scare me into silence, they didn't know who they were dealing with. I drove straight to St. Mary's. The church was locked, its doors chained shut since the investigation began, but I knew another way in, a side door near the pantry. The same door I'd seen Sister Evelyn and Father Daniel use that night. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the faint smell of incense. The pews sat in ghostly silence. I walked toward the pantry, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. That's when I noticed something new, a small notebook lying on the floor near the storage shelves. The cover was worn, the edges frayed. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. It was her handwriting. Evelyn's. Most of it was Bible notes, sermon drafts, reflections, but the last few pages were different. Greater than, he says we'll be forgiven if we confess together. But what if they never forgive us? What if the truth destroys everything? Daniel wants to go to the bishop. I told him no. They'll turn on us. I've already seen what this town does to people who fall. Someone saw us that night. I know it. I can feel it. My stomach twisted. She'd known I saw her. Then the final line stopped me cold. Greater than, if you're reading this, it means he found me first. I froze. He found her first. Who was she talking about? Father Daniel. Someone else. I heard a noise behind me, a soft creak, like a footstep on wood. I spun around, flashlight trembling, but no one was there. Still, I could feel it, that same heavy presence from the night before. Someone was watching me again. And this time, I knew for certain, Evelyn hadn't disappeared by choice. My flashlight flickered as I backed away from the pantry, Evelyn's notebook still clutched in my shaking hands. The church was too quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against your ears. Then, a voice came from the shadows near the altar. You shouldn't have come back here. I froze. It was Father Daniel. He stepped into the light, his collar gone, his eyes hollow. He looked nothing like the calm priest I'd once known. There was something fractured in him now, guilt, fear, and something darker. She's gone, Daniel, I said carefully. They're looking for her. What happened? He looked down at the floor, then back at me. You think you know everything, he said quietly. You saw one night and built your own story. Then tell me the real one. He laughed softly, a broken, empty sound. She wanted to leave. She couldn't take the whispers anymore. The shame. Said the church was rotting from the inside, that people would never forgive us. I told her to wait, that we could fix it. But she didn't listen. He started pacing, his voice shaking. We argued in the pantry. I tried to stop her. She slipped, hit her head. My stomach turned cold. You're saying it was an accident? He nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I panicked. I thought if they found out, they'd think I killed her on purpose. I buried her behind the old chapel wall. I thought it was what she'd want, to stay close to the place she gave her life to. I didn't realize I was crying until my vision blurred. Daniel took a deep breath, stepped forward, and placed the notebook gently into my hands. You wanted the truth, he whispered. Now you have it. Do what you need to do. He turned, walked toward the confessional booth, and closed the door behind him. When the police arrived later, I handed them the notebook and told them everything. They found her exactly where he said she'd be. Father Daniel didn't resist when they took him away. He just looked at me one last time and said, "You were right to speak. But the truth always costs something." And he was right. Because even after the headlines faded and the church reopened, nothing in that town ever felt pure again. The whispers didn't stop, they just changed direction. Now, when people look at me, they don't call me a sinner anymore. They call me the one who told the truth.